Hey Emma, how you doing?
Very good. How are you?
Yes, a bit panicked there. I nearly gave away my trade secrets because I don't. I'm still waiting for my desk tidy from Amazon to raise my Mac. So I have all these books, and I was busily kind of panicking and seeing the mouse moving across to start the show. So yeah, I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Very good. Got your Nexa colours on as well?
Yes, I do actually. I decided to wear my Nexa uniform today. So yeah, I do like orange. I mean, it just so happens that obviously now being orange and being branded as orange, and also HubSpot being orange, I rarely get to wear this shirt, right? But for those of the people watching from the UK, I basically look like a home base or B&Q, I think it is, isn't it? B&Q, like orange.
Yeah, that's right. Well, Will's just sent us a message. I think he's based just out of Manchester. So yeah, just I think it is B&Q actually thinking about it. But tell us if we're
Yeah,
wrong, Will. Awesome. She'll get
home
cracking,
base.
Andrew.
Yep, definitely. Yeah, we've got
So
a busy show today.
yeah, and we've got a very special guest as well. So yeah, very excited about today's show as normal. I'm always excited, as we kind of discussed last week.
Very excited. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it's great. So actually, Andrew, I think you've got some sort of previous with our guest today. So perhaps
Yep.
maybe tell us about how you first met Glenn, maybe who he is, and yeah, it'd be good to get some context, I think.
Yeah, good stuff. So for obviously those of you that have signed up and registered, seen who we've got on the show today, I'm going to do a quite a short introduction, and then I'll let Glenn kind of take the floor and introduce himself properly. But I met Glenn many moons ago now. Actually, I think it may be 5-6 years ago. So I had a problem with my car, and it was a self-inflicted problem, to be fair. Reversing out of the garage perhaps a bit too fast, decided to tear off my wing mirror. And someone had recommended at the time, James Pikeway, that most of you know that watch the show. He was doing a radio show with this guy called Glenn, who was a mechanical whiz, as it were. And he said, "Oh, go and see Glenn, he'll sort you out." So I went down there and kind of looked at it. Yep. Okay, so to get a new one, 3.5 grand from GM, to get a replacement breakers, 1,500, or I could cut a piece of glass and fix it, and that'll be 80 dirhams. And I was like, okay, so you and me are going to be friends. After living in the Middle East for X number of years and always kind of raving it, because as much as I do have a manly beard, when it comes to anything mechanical, I am genuinely clueless. To the point probably where a couple of weeks ago, my car just started misbehaving. I took it to Glenn and I was like, I don't know what's wrong. And he goes, you haven't got any water in it. And I was like, what, like the washers? And he was like, no. So, but Glenn's never made me feel bad about that. So I'm very comfortable being complete a novice around him. So yeah, I think we'd like to introduce you to Glenn, owner of Powerworks. So Glenn, if you want to switch on your camera and switch on your video, so we can see you.
It says you cannot start your video because the host has stopped it.
Amazing.
Oh dear.
This is you, control freak Andrew here, who looks like he should know some stuff about cars but doesn't. Finding all sorts of stuff out about you today.
Sorry, yeah, we're having some. So I'll let
Nobody's
you be
losing
in shadow
anything.
at the moment, because okay, let me just change that. Okay, and he's disappeared. Perfect. Okay, that's wonderful. Excellent. Give me 1 second here, Amit. If you can fill air for 2 seconds, I'm just going to try and get Glenn back. Give me one second.
No problem. Sorry about this, guys. So, okay.
Right then, here we go. Glenn should be back now. Glenn is back, as there he is, and for whatever reason, his video is not working. Okay, Glenn, do you want to start the introduction and I'll work? There we are.
There you go.
Success. Amazing.
Awesome.
There we go. See how much I built you up there, and then the one thing that I need to do from a technical perspective, I failed.
Yeah, well, you see, this is the anticipation, isn't it? Everyone's going to be well disappointed when they hear me ramble on. So.
Sure. So do you want to give us your backstory, Glenn?
Yeah, I mean, I'm proud to say I'm a mechanic, nothing else, nothing less. I've been doing it now for, it seems like forever, as long as I've been. After finishing my A-levels, that's what I did. I did a year of motorsport, and that was in the UK. Then through wanting to continue the motorsport field with Seat touring cars, I ended up with looking for a sponsor, and the only way I could actually do that was to sponsor myself, and to do that I needed a job. So the job I had in the butchers wasn't cutting it. The paper round I was getting a bit too old for, so I ended up working in the local Volkswagen dealership, and I'd had a thing for VW since I first saw a Mark II GTI on the front of Max Power magazine in probably like 1995, 96, and I was only 10 years old, so I just had a thing for him, and I thought, why not go and work for him? And it was really awkward actually when I was signing up for training courses and going for interviews. They were sort of double checking my, we had the big burgundy sort of books, the record of achievements that you'd get all your certificates in.
Oh, yeah. You remember those?
You're like dead proud of them at 16, 17, aren't you? Walking around with, look, I've got a qualification. And, walking into interviews, and first of all, they're looking at it as if say, you want to be a mechanic, but you've finished school. And then they find out you stayed on and did sixth form. They're like, what are you doing? One of the local colleges, Chesterfield College, when I went for the interview to get on and enrolled on the course, they actually said to me, are you sure you want to do this? Like, this isn't for you. Like, you've got academic qualifications, you can go and do something else. So it's like, you know what, I don't really fancy being on a course with you guys. And VW just ticked all the boxes. They took it dead serious, like super serious. Like, everything's got to be done in a perfectly regimented way. They were all about data, all about this is how we do it, and nobody tells us any different. And that just suited me, and I liked it, and I got all right at it, and as everybody would, because if you put any effort into that kind of training, the training was second to none for what I wanted to do. So I stuck at it for about 6.5 years, and then I was kind of offered the job of service manager in my dealership, sort of in a underhanded kind of way, where it was, if you take the job, you won't get the pay rise unless you complete the training within the next 24 months. But we're not doing any training for the next 18 months. And it was actually impossible to do it in 6 months. So bit disillusioned by it all, and thought, you know what, I'm only 24, I've got no commitments in the UK. The guy that had trained me as an apprentice trainer when he worked for VW for the 3 years that I was an apprentice, he was in the Middle East, in Dubai, and I looked after his family's cars for him while he was away. And just one snowy evening, his wife was picking up their little Seat Ibiza, and I just said, oh, any chance Phil's got any jobs for me? And then that was it. And I came over here, and instead of working with Phil, I ended up replacing him because he'd moved on. And that was that. And then 8 years later, I'm doing it for myself, being bounced around a few different companies, some good experiences, one really bad experience. And that was quite hard to get over, actually, about 4 years ago. But, I'm glad we fought through it. And now I'm doing it for myself. And that's down to the fact that partly a lot of people have been saying it to me for a long time. A lot of people have said, well, why don't you do this for yourself? Wasn't that I necessarily didn't think I could, is what I just genuinely didn't want to. And I just saw a value in having that guaranteed regular salary. But over the last couple of years, there's no such thing as a guaranteed regular salary, I've learned. And there was a lot of value added to a lot of businesses when I've moved to them to work for them. And not that I begrudged it, because I joined them with open eyes, but it just made sense to me that, you know, I'm worth a little bit more than I'm necessarily being paid. And that wouldn't have been a consideration to me 8 years ago, but with 2 kids, one of which is about to start full-time school in September, it's kind of a big consideration now. So yeah, I need to make sure I'm getting my money's worth out of you know, the time that I've been putting in. And it's been interesting getting to this point. Like I say, we've had a horror story to, you know, that's something that really affected us for quite a while, and we're still getting over a lot of that still now. But we made it to where we are, and things are looking quite good. It's exciting, and it's certainly taken my mind off everything else that's been going on in the world, which has been a noticeable bonus.
No, I mean, congratulations, Glenn. I think, you know, I think firstly, if you don't have a bad experience in Dubai, then you've not really had an experience in Dubai. That's worth anything. I think that sort of context sort of helps a lot of people. I was going to say, I mean, when did you decide that it was right? Now's the time, because obviously you said that, you know, many people had mentioned it to you in the past, and you know, what was that kind of moment, and what really made you kind of, you know, go that one step further this time? Well,
I had a customer who turned into a friend. A lot of my customers do turn into friends, like, you know, with Andrew. Andrew's a friend, but we met as he was a customer initially, and you know, a lot of that happens, especially here, because look, there's a reason people that were supposed to be training prospective mechanics were telling me that I was not suited for the job, and that was ultimately just down to the way people view mechanics. You know, especially from where I'm from, you either worked down the pit, or you went to be a mechanic, or you passed your exams to stay on at school after you were 14 or whatever, and you went to university and became a vet or something, right? There was nothing. You're either smart or you worked down the pit and you're a mechanic. If you were scared to go down the pit, you went and worked on the spanners, and that was it. For me, obviously they've all shut long ago, and I just wanted to do it out of an interest. And I thought, you know what? I've spent certainly the last 4 or 5 years at school and A-levels where I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to go to university. I'm the first one from my family to go and do it, and it's going to be great. I'm going to do history, politics, and law, just like my dad, because my dad went back as a mature student when we'd all grown up. And I just really wanted to make him proud, but ultimately I knew it wasn't for me, and I wanted to be doing something that kept me busy, challenged me. And I had a situation where a friend at the time, her dad, when I was still in school, her dad had sort of said something along the lines of, oh, you know, he's useless in me. He'll never be anything practical or be able to use his hands to do anything. And that, you know, to a 17-year-old kid, that certainly gets you wound up. And that is exactly what it did to me. I was like, oh, you know what? Let's see then. You know, you can't even spell your own name just because you can use your hands. You know, like, I'll be able to do it. And you know what it's like. And I just thought, well, let's just go and do it. And I did. It's hard to say exactly where the passion comes from. I can remember when I started doing well with my training, and my mum said to me, you were just constantly washing your hands as a kid. Why are you doing the dirtiest job you could have done when you were the cleanest kid that I could have imagined? And obviously I don't really remember that, but she said I had a real affectation for just wanting to clean my hands all the time and never wanting to get dirty, and never wanting to go in goal when we were playing football because I didn't want to get my hands dirty saving it and stuff like that. So, you know, it's very strange how these things happen. But I just, in terms of knowing that it was time, one of my customers had said to me, oh, I'll put your money in, I'll put some money in, and, you know, and we'll do it, let's do it. And so I went through the motions, and he changed his mind and wanted to do it in the UK. So we went back to the UK and went over there, and changed his mind again and said, no, let's do it here in the UAE. So for a family, and a young family like ours, and we can't have that. We needed to have some stability. So we just said as a family, no, draw a line under it. We're not doing it anymore. And in the sort of process of doing the business plans, I'd mentioned it to another customer who deals with investments and high net worth individuals that are looking to invest in things. And he said, look, I'll get you the cash for that tomorrow. No problem. He says, I'm a customer. I can vouch for you. And again, the small world that we live in Dubai, his wife knew my wife anyway. That's how it ended up being a customer of mine. And then all of a sudden, another British guy was on board and was like, yeah, I'll give you all the money you need and you can keep 50% of the equity. And I was like, trying to snap his hand off. That was amazing. So I put it to my wife and we discussed it. And me and Amy both agreed it was the right thing to do. And we were going to make a go of it. And this was going to be our sort of forever job. This was it now. No more moving around, no more worrying about new visas, no more worrying about offer letters and signing contracts and all that. And it just came to be that, somebody happened to mention it to me. I thought it was the right thing to do. And, we had quite a bad experience before. When you fight in the battle of getting over that, which we still are to some degree now, it opened your eyes to everything. And it made me realize that if I was to run my own business, I can make sure that that doesn't happen to anyone that I employ. And I can also make sure that, there's a lot of places out there now, the place that I left, that are still paying their staff 25-30% of their salary just because they can get away with it, not because they need to. Yet there's businesses out there that are paying their staff full salaries and 50% even that really can't, but they're just trying to look after the people that make them the money. And in our trade, I see that a lot. And I can only speak for our trade, but I see it a lot where it's quite hard to make money in it. But the reasons for that, we could go on for hours. I just thought that I could overcome those reasons and make sure everything was fair and make sure people are paid right, on time, looked after, but ultimately keep the balance of, you've got to love your staff as much as you love your customers, for me. And they're both, one doesn't come without the other. And it's often lost here. And I found that a lot. And so all these things just sort of clicked into place. And when somebody gives you that kind of offer for all the money you want, and you keep half of the shares with an option to buy them out at any time, and et cetera, it was a great deal. And we talked about it and agreed that was the thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. It's funny, actually. I remember, when I think Andrew first met you and you'd saved him, I don't know, the best part of 1,500 dirhams for his mirror. And I think the first question I said to him, I was like, really? Like in Dubai, that happened? And just because I think we're just all used to, it's one of those things, I guess, there's something wrong with your car and you have to get it fixed, but you just know, no matter how small the job is, it's just going to cost a fortune, I guess, right? And I guess, when you've got that kind of honest and very kind of humble mentality, people relate to that, and you're just building loyalty instantly, right? I mean, I'm guessing Andrew's never been to anyone else since that moment, and you've got, a loyal customer there that goes and, vouches for you, speaks to others about you, and I guess that kind of word of mouth and that kind of network has really kind of helped you over the last few years, I guess, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I should have probably said at the start, so that's typical me, just diving straight in. But thanks for having me on, and this kind of thing is invaluable, and I agree. I appreciate the opportunity to tell people about myself, and we, like I say, Andrew sort of can tell you himself, but you got to know me through the radio, as he said, with James Pike away. We were both doing different shows, aired on the same night actually, but I was going in and doing the sort of late slot live with James. And one of the things I always, the way we were taught as mechanics, and it's part of that sort of, to build people up as mechanics in the UK in particular, in Europe, where people realized about 15, 20 years ago that it was no longer just swinging hammers and getting dirty, and it was going to be needed to be treated as a profession to get the right kind of people into it. I mean, you go to one of Elon Musk's Tesla factories, you go to any car building factory, but a lot of people seem to be able to envisage a Tesla factory, and it's like an iPhone with wheels on it, right? So people just think about, are you going to have a school dropout that can barely read and write building a Tesla? Well, unfortunately, you're not. people didn't appreciate that. And it's been the case for many, many, many years on all manufacturers' vehicles, but it's become more apparent these days. And we were always taught as a way, I think, as I say, to build people up to get into that mindset was, well, the salesperson will sell the first car. And for a VW, for me, that's the easiest job in the world. Because if I'm going to buy a new car, if I've got the money to buy a new car, they're the first place I'm going to look. But some people have to be sold, you know, and that's the job of the salesperson. Now, they'll sell the first one, but if I mess up every time it comes in for service, or I don't fix the car properly every time, then I'm going to buy another one.
Right.
If I keep them happy, if I do my job properly and treat them as a customer of me rather than the business is just paying me a wage every month and I just do my job, and if I mess up, so what? If I do my job right, they'll buy another one, they'll buy another one, they'll buy another one, another one. So the salesperson sells the first one, the technician sells the next 10. That's how we were taught. And you know, it's a bit of one of those sort of, you know, sort of memes that you can print off as self-motivation or whatever you want to call it, but it does work. And if you're honest with people and fix the car properly, then that's more important to me than anything else. And fortunately, it's proven in the past that, you know, Andrew spent 70 to 80 dirhams on a mirror glass and saved a fortune, but he's also spent a fortune on the car with me. And obviously it's a business, so obviously there's money to be made there, right? So it's not a matter of, it's not a matter of just thinking, well, you can't go out saving people money on every job. Well, of course we can't. Ultimately, you have to spend money sometimes on fixing something right.
Yeah.
You have to do it properly. Eventually, there'll be something that you can't avoid doing. However, you know, you've got to allow for somebody to get to know you, to trust you. You've got to do the right thing at the right time. You can't just go into it thinking, oh, I'm just going to do whatever I can to save money for this person so they come back, because sometimes that's going to make it a whole lot worse. So you just have to do the job properly. When it comes to a piece of glass, it's a piece of glass. It's not a massive problem. You go and cut a piece of glass from the glass factory, that's fine, you'll be good. If it's an internal engine component, that's a different story, and we're not going to go and make something or use a used part, because we want to do it right. So it's about using the skills. It's a long, arduous training program to do something like that. And the worst thing is when you come out of a course, I've done it a couple of times actually in Milton Keynes. I've done a training course on different components, different systems, and come out of that a few weeks before a new model's been launched, and then the whole thing I've learned is out of date instantly. You're no longer up to date, and you need to go back and redo it because the new model's got something else on it that was a secret until launch. And then, you know, it's like, oh, got to go and learn again about something very similar but totally different, if you know what I mean. And it's, to get the benefit of the hard work you put into the training, you've really got to show people you know what you're doing by just being confident in it and explaining as easily as possible for people to understand in layman's terms what you're actually doing. A lot of the things we do now include pictures and videos to try and make it obvious to people. Now, I know there's some people that don't want to see it. I had a car in for James Pikeway a few weeks ago, and I knew he'd love it. So I sent him pictures and videos of absolutely everything. It was a Jeep Wrangler, and I knew one of the jobs I was changing the window regulator. Now, when we pulled those panels off, there's a little rubber seal that sits in the bottom. They're always full of sand. And I thought, James is going to love this. So I just pulled the seal off while I had it on video and showed him all the sand running out. And I knew he'd like to see it, and he did like to see it. Some people don't want to know. This isn't a male-female thing, but if it was my wife, she doesn't care. Just fix the car. What are you sending me that for? I'm interested. Yeah, this sand didn't live in the desert. What did you think was going to be in there? And it's like, you know, so you just, but it's all about people being able to see what we're doing. If I tell you it needs X component, that might mean nothing to you. If I say it needs a rear trailing arm, that means nothing to most people. But if you can show them why it needs that, it doesn't matter if they understand. They can explain it, or you can make it that you can explain. That's probably why. It's probably why the radio sort of worked.
You know, how did that come about? So, I mean, because obviously, I think for those who don't know, James Pikeway, and Andrew can explain this better, but you know, a very kind of well-known radio host here in Dubai, and he used to run a kind of evening show every single night on the main kind of business station here, Dubai Eye, right? And so yeah, right, okay, cool. So how did that come about? How did that kind of radio gig come about for you, Glenn?
I don't know. Obviously, for myself, I don't know for Andrew. Andrew was doing it a bit longer than I was, but I left the company I came here to work for. Originally moved and left country for was AAA. Great place. They're still going. They're not as big as they were, but that's for various reasons. But they're still going, and they've been here 40 odd years. One of the original places, and I had a great time there. We'd had our first baby, and things were going great, and I got headhunted. Basically, someone had put a load of money into a workshop and wanted to make it work, and found out who their biggest competition was, and then thought, well, we'll go and steal their guy, and that's what happened, and turned out to be the worst thing I ever did. Although that's where I met Andrew, so you know, there's always
swings and roundabouts.
Yeah, exactly.
Still the worst thing you ever did.
Yeah, that was a bad experience I was talking about. Yeah, so
exactly, meeting me.
So you know, it was like, okay, I'll go and do it, and it was more money on the face of it. I thought, okay, let's go and do it. And you know, when I got there, I was just trying to think of something I could do to bring customers. I'd gone from a place where we were doing 25, 30 customers a day, and I'd really worked hard for 4 years, learning about completely different vehicles to what I was used to learn on, like just awful vehicles compared to what I was used to. Older than I was used to, obviously, being from a dealership, completely off-brand, completely different kind of customers, having to be the youngest. I was 24 when I joined, and I was the youngest person in the whole business, but I was in charge of everyone apart from my GM. That's mental. To get over that was crazy. So it took a lot of hard work, but we got there and we did really, really well. And I had a couple of targets that I set, and we met them. And I thought, you know what, where do I go now? My senior is only 10 years older than me, 15 years older than me. He's not going anywhere. They're not going to get rid of him. He's doing a good job, and I don't want them to. So where do I go? So I left and moved on. I just thought, how do I make people know? I was kind of against the whole Facebook thing at the time. And it's partly just down to I just misused it when I was in the UK. I was constantly getting my page taken down, and you know, just getting involved in drunken back and forth with people, or putting things on there about football rivalries and things like that it just weren't great. So I just stopped using it. And so I thought, what do I do? And there was James did a show on Nightline with Imtishan and Shazad, which was the car show or car talk. And it was all new car reviews and stuff like that. And I used to listen to it out of interest sometimes, but I always used to think they actually need a mechanic on there to shut them up a little bit, because they're going on about rubbish cars here, saying they're the best thing ever. They want to get under the bonnet and understand, no, they're not. Like they're raving about some Jaguar once, and I was thinking that Jaguar's got an engine that's 20 years old in it, and someone's paying like $50,000 for that thing. What are they doing? So I sent an email in, and to the Nightline email, and I got a reply sort of straight away. I think the lady was called Sue. Andrew might remember more than me. But
Yeah, the producer.
That's right. And then got a phone call from some Canadian guy, and I was like, "Who's this?" And honestly, it was like some sort of weird casting couch thing. After about 10 minutes of talking to me, he's like, "Yeah, you sound all right. Then we'll get you on." I was like, "Okay." just having a chat with me to see how I sounded, and then I think I went in. I think it was a week before he left for the summer. He was like, "Come in on the Wednesday, and we'll do a show. I've got a free slot. We'll do a show, and if it goes all right, I'll see you after the summer." And that, I really enjoyed it. I was, you know, rabbit in the headlights, and didn't really express myself properly, and I tried to be I was too worried about saying something that was wrong. I was very on the fence about everything, and you kind of had to be. We had to be very careful about, you know, sponsorships and stuff and advertisements, and revenues and partners and stuff like that on the radio show. But I was but from the July to the September when we actually started again, such a long time, it dragged. I was desperate for him to call me and say, let's do it. And he had told me before he left, but obviously that guy has a million other things he wants to do, and I was the last thing on the list, obviously. So he called me and we started it up, and you know, maybe I'm the reason they stopped doing it. Who knows? Because it's only a couple of years later that show's no longer, and everyone else has been on there for years. So maybe I'm the reason it's no longer with us. So if that's the case, I apologise. But it's just one of those.
We can blame Andrew for that as well. It's fine.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of blame laying at my door at the moment. I can feel the pressure is heaping up and heaping up.
Yeah, well,
I'm getting punished for not turning your video on straight away, I feel.
Exactly.
Yeah. Did you find even back then that just being on a show was kind of raising your profile and new faces were turning up at the garage you were at? I mean, was that kind of happening then on the back of a show?
Yeah, so the funny thing is, like I say, I went out to do it thinking it'd be free advertising. I thought it'd be a great idea to do that and get people to know I didn't want to steal customers from the place I'd left. I hadn't left on bad terms. Like I say, they were great, and I respect everything they do. They've still got the majority of the same staff. They've shrunk down a little bit, as I said, but they've got the majority of the same staff. They're a great company to work for. So I didn't want to steal customers from them. What I wanted to do was to attract a new kind of customer. And so I thought it'd be a great idea to go on there and they'll hear about where I work and it'll be great. And what actually ended up happening, because of the advertising sort of responsibility they had to their advertisers, we couldn't go on there and plug ourselves. You know, it wasn't a case of I could sit there and say, this is where I work, this is my number, give me a call. It wasn't like that. I just started to enjoy doing it. And, you know, we had a couple of situations quite early on where people were calling in and sending messages in where they'd had something told them about the certain car they were driving at the time. And we managed to talk them through it. And it's very, very quickly, like within 2 or 3 shows, just purely became about letting people know that not all mechanics are there to rip you off. And not all mechanics are thick, for want of a better word. You know, that there are some decent people out there. I'm not the only one in Dubai. That I would, you know, if something happened to me tomorrow and I didn't have my own business with my own guys there that I trusted, there are places that I would go. AAA, as I say, I've mentioned before.
Yeah. And
there are other places that I would go. So it just quickly became about having some pride for my industry, really, in my trade, and just being like, you know, we do a lot of training and some people take it quite seriously and there are good places to go. And we got a few customers out of it. Did get a few. Some people would send emails and ask for my contact details, and you know, we would just, okay, that's fine, you can have them. Or some people would sort of, every now and again, James would introduce the segment as Glenn from, it was GAE at the time, and then we changed the name to CarPro, so it'd be Glenn from CarPro. So people got to know him, and we did get quite a few customers. Then we had a marketing guy called Darren who came on board, and he wasn't somebody I hired. He was hired by the parent company, but he came in and took a photograph of me and put it up on the wall. It was like this massive A1 poster, picture of me on the wall outside the workshop and inside the door. We used to have like a live service entrance where you drive your car in, and then as anyone got out of the car, they'd just be greeted by this massive picture of me. It's like excellent.
That's
yeah.
That's not the kind of thing that was hanging up in the old mechanics place back in the UK. I'm guessing it might
No,
have been a bit
no,
of page reaction or something
yeah.
like that. There wasn't Glenn up on the wall.
Yeah, a few too many clothes on. Yeah, no, it was. So we did get something from it. I think obviously that's now evolved into a podcast, which we do. Again,
yes. Tell us about that. How's that? Is it the same kind of show, or it's a
lot looser now? I mean, we spend a lot of time talking about nothing, literally, like the kind of podcast. And the problem is, I think sometimes James does like that, but I think he also likes to stay quite on message where possible. But I listen to podcasts. I listen to Joe Rogan, and I'll happily listen to Joe Rogan about and just rambles on about anything. Sometimes you tell the same stories you told the guest that you had on the previous day, but I'll still listen to it for 3 hours. And that's the kind of podcast I listen to. And it sort of all goes back to the Ricky Gervais show, I suppose, the original sort of big podcast. It was just three mates in the pub, effectively. They were in the studio, but that's how it came across. And that's just sort of what makes me happy, just have a chat and be involved in a chat. And okay, you can't talk back to a podcast, but you can listen to it. And I think if you can provoke a reaction out of somebody to at least review something or leave a comment, that's great. I'm not talking about just saying something completely out there, but it just to start a conversation. And I think most people can understand what I'm trying to get across eventually. And I think the shows we've got are pretty good. Andrew does the tech show. I do the car show. We've got a doctor. I don't know how we've managed to get a doctor.
That's highly suspicious.
Yeah,
I think
So
actually, Dr. Jenna, who was on that, was actually my doctor, my GP. So she was. I introduced James to her. So yeah, that's how she. So she is a GP. I mean, she is a real doctor. Well, I hope she is. I mean, it'll be a bit of a nightmare if she isn't.
Are you saying Dr. James Pykeway isn't a real doctor?
No, he's Dr. Professor James Pykeway, because the challenge is you never know what to call him, because sometimes I call him Professor, which he doesn't like. I think he likes students calling that. Doctor he's not keen on, unless he's on a plane and people go, "Is there a doctor here?" and he can pull that card. But other than that, I think he's just Pykeway.
Great. So Glenn, let's turn our attention now to Powerworks. And so, I mean, obviously that, I think in your bio, it mentioned that the company was set up in February. Is that right?
So we started working in February, basically, at the end of February. I finished the month of February, and that was it. Then I was going to get paid for February and put my notice in. We'd had a few months where salaries were getting delayed for unknown reasons, unnecessary, just for pure laziness and incompetence, really. Money was there, and I thought, you know what? If I put my notice in now, I'm not going to get paid. We do need the money, so I'll wait to get paid. So we made a start, found the warehouse, agreed on the terms for the drawdown from the investment, and that was it. All of a sudden, there was real estate meetings for the warehouse and going around Al Quoz industrial area here in Dubai, trying to find the right spot. And then when you got the right spot, having everything you needed, parking space, internal space, etc. And it was always going to be a compromise. And we ended up going for somewhere which was a good location, but also it was part of a complex of warehouses. So hopefully when it grows, we can move into one of the vacant ones and not have to move sites. So that was always quite important. And there's 11 warehouses around and about us. So if we fill all those, we don't need to worry about moving sites. It'll be international expansion if it gets that busy. So that's good. We ended up all right. And once I put my notice in, all of a sudden, coronavirus and the COVID-19 disease that comes with it, and it's like, oh, great, So I was putting into action sort of action plans and things for my previous employer. Using the time when we were fully locked down, we had like 2 weeks of complete lockdown where between 8 and 2 we were allowed out. Now our industry wasn't really affected by it. We were classed as service, so we could keep working, but still could only work between 8 and 2. And then it was Ramadan. Everything was all up in the air, but like I said at the start, it kept my mind off of all that. And I got a few extra hours every day with the family, which was great. So that was a nice leveler every day when I came home. And I just got to work with a big hammer, basically, breaking down the old office building that was in this warehouse, removing all the stuff I didn't need. And then it was test the floor for the concrete, make sure it's safe to put lifts on it. It wasn't, so we had to redo that, which was a bit of a blow, but not too expensive. And then it was test the electrics, test the fire system, get all that redone. We went for converted shipping containers for the office so that we don't have to fix anything.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah, so that was just that just means it's easy to stay safe there. That, you know, they're self-contained. If we need to get them out, they just lift out, obviously. And there was no sort of necessary. It wasn't necessary to get any approvals for them. They're not fixed to anything, the wall or the floor or the ceiling. They're standalone. They've just got a power connection, and that's it. So once they were in, that company really struggled with the lockdown. They had a number of their staff that were part of labour camps, which were found to have active cases of coronavirus. So they had all their staff locked down and couldn't do anything. So a 10-day job originally ended up taking 2.5 months. So that did two things. It delayed everything because they had to go in right to the back of the warehouse through the main, where the vehicles would enter, because that's where the customer door was.
Yeah.
But I couldn't put any of my lifts in without getting them in first, because I wouldn't have been able to maneuver them. So I had to wait for everything. So there was about 3 weeks worth of work that could have been done in sort of 2 days, but I just dragged it out and did it myself. Saved a bit of money, obviously, and kept me active and busy and otherwise engaged. And it was good. On paper, it's not a great time to start a business, right?
I've heard that.
Yeah,
It's funny.
yeah. You know, it's like economy's as low as it's ever been, as quickly as it's ever been for probably since depression of the 30s. And then all of a sudden, I'm thinking it's a great idea to take a huge amount of money from somebody,
Right,
and tell them I'm going to pay them 4 times that back. And it's like, But I was just busy. I was just totally busy in it. And I thought to myself, well, you know what? If there's ever a time to do it, then let's flip it round. Now is the time, because I've got the time to be doing the work and getting it ready. There's going to be a lot of people whose cars aren't being used for months, and that's the worst thing you can do for a car. That's the absolute worst thing to do to a car, apart from roll it down the hill. Not using it is the worst complete thing you can do. So there's going to be a massive rebound, even if it's short-lived, from that, when we do eventually get the doors open. And also, this is purely a business mindset, and it's just one of those things, unfortunately, you have to accept in businesses. There's going to be a lot of competition die out, and that's just the way it's going to be.
Yeah.
So a lot of the little garages that are running on next to no margin because they're just trying to price everyone out of the market, they can't do that, because they can't. They're hand to mouth, and it's a horrible, ruthless thing to say, but it's been proven true. And there's a lot of what would have potentially been competition around and about that have died out. And that's not to say it's easy, because it isn't.
Yeah.
Of course it isn't. Everyone's a lot more price conscious, and that's been the case for a few years, though. I think what I found here, when I was at my first company in AAA, I was in a little bit of a bubble. So it was a well-established business. We had a well-established customer base, the majority of which had been customers for over 10, 15 years. You know, I came in when it was still an employment package. So I got a house, a phone, a car, fuel, salary, everything. I literally had no idea what to do with the money at the end of every month. It was like, well, I can't spend that on food. Jeez, like, you know. So it was send money home, and everything was really great. And all the customers that came there were the same. So they all had disposable income. They all drove 2 or 3 cars. And I was in that, and I then got out of that and had to realize, hang on, I've now got to find customers, and that's very difficult. And I'm of the mindset, as I said before, that if you trust somewhere, you should stick with them. You know, they're good at what they do. They don't let you down. They're trustworthy. Stick with them. So I'm thinking, well, I can't steal customers. I've got to find customers, and it sort of opened my eyes a little bit then. And I think now, whilst I had an established customer base, and that's obviously very important, that was what I built my business plan on. I didn't take anything else for granted. I just knew what I had sort of guaranteed, and the rest I was prospecting on.
Okay.
It's come about quite quickly that we are getting quite a few new customers in there, and there are people still hanging around. But that time from leaving AAA to now, I've gotten used to having to find customers and attract customers and help them understand their bill and why they need to pay this amount.
Yeah.
And dealing with costs, understanding that I can't just write a number on the bottom of an invoice and they'll pay it, explaining the options. And people are price conscious now, of course, but I think they've been cost conscious for at least the last 3, maybe 4 years. It's been noticeable to me.
Yeah.
So it's not been that
it's not
much
new.
of a huge shock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple of questions. I think the first one, Glenn, in terms of while obviously, you mentioned that you signed a warehouse and made a commitment. Obviously, you had an investor on board. So when Corona hit, everyone's in lockdown. The business obviously is being delayed. Like you said, a couple of week jobs is taking a couple of months now. What was the relationship like with the investor? Was there kind of nervousness from their side, or was it a case of, look, we're in this together? Don't worry about it, because I guess, like you said, it's that pressure of, you're spending someone else's money at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
And you've made a commitment. So how was that kind of relationship? Was it, any kind of pressures on the back of that, or?
Well, it's funny. He knew me from the radio show. He used to listen to the radio show, and he wasn't aware that we'd moved on to podcasting. He just thought that, the radio station had changed. They were playing music now, and it didn't work for talk show, which is true. But we had actually stayed together as a group and moved on. He wasn't aware of that. Then he got onto it, and he was quite keen. That's how it ended up as being Powerworks. He was quite keen to have my name in the title of the business, and originally wanted it to be Glenn Power Motors. I know somebody here who had their own garage that was their name, and it was a nightmare for them to ever sell it. It was difficult for them to do anything on the trade license because they had to be named on it all the time. If they wanted to go and do something else, it was hard. So I was advised very early on not to do that. Anyone that knew me would know me. Like, my name doesn't attract. It's different. If it was called Michael Schumacher Motors, then that's different. But I'm not Michael Schumacher. Nobody knows who I am. If they know my name already, then that's enough. So I suggested Powerworks, and they were happy with it. In January, when the discussions got quite serious after we came back from a Christmas break in the UK, a lot of his investments, I think, were suffering because of it was unknown at the time. A lot of people were suspicious about the World Health Organization, and it turns out probably rightly so. And everyone was unsure. Production, everything was down in pretty much a lot of China.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just difficult. Nobody could see where it was going. And on the safety side, I think because of the last few years, I think people were just cutting all their projections. And I know he was, because he told me he was suffering every time he looked at his investments. Every time he looked at stocks and shares, he was losing. So initially it was that way, but then I think it became quite apparent to him that this, although it's not bricks and mortar, he hasn't bought the warehouse, he doesn't own the land, obviously, but it's a physical, tangible business. There's an actual, we're a machine that is, if we're managed and controlled and grown properly, we can make money. There's always that to making money, and providing that we get up and running off the floor, we'll be okay. There are always going to be people that want to have their car looked after properly, and I think that then once we got to sort of February, March time, it was a keen eagerness to, let's go, let's get on this. There was delays, obviously, as I said, with some of the equipment, the office building, and then there were delays with trade licenses and things like that. But it was noticeable how the sort of anxiety initially had then turned into, no, let's get on with this, and it was good. I was confident in it, that the customer I mentioned before who sort of set the deal up, he took a sort of a 10% stake in the business as a you know, part of his, that's his fee basically for setting the deal, which was great. So there was 3 of us really working hard on it, working together. We all brought different things. Obviously the day-to-day is down to me, but behind the scenes is down to them basically. And it really helped that I was busy and he was keen, and it just made sense, and it just seemed to work. And I can't say that it wouldn't, you know, if we were to do it, if I'd never done it and today we were going to have that discussion, maybe it would be different. If we'd have done it a year ago, it might have been different, but it just seemed to me that everything clicked into place.
Okay.
One way or the other, it worked out.
Yeah, and I think the real, you know, some of the success stories that I know me and Andrew are hearing about all the time on, you know, on the back of COVID is just people who remain positive, people who, you know, perhaps could have knuckled down, you know, the ones who really said, look, you know, we're on a mission, this doesn't need to change anything. You know, and I think you guys, you know, definitely kind of showed that sort of mentality, and I think that really helps. But you opened your doors in June, so obviously we're still, you know, under the threat of COVID to some respect. But how's it been for you since? I mean, I guess it was a big sigh of relief when you finally opened up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When the trade license came through and it was, you know, 30th of May, it was like, oh, great, done. We can get on with it. And you know, it was difficult. I had a bit of a difficult, for me, it was a difficult 3 months of people still getting in touch now and again, needing things doing, but I hadn't got a physical location to help them out. And I was, you know, having to send them around my network of friends and stay in touch with other people, like trying to keep them on the road and make sure that they knew I wasn't going anywhere, but couldn't tell them too much. And, you know, as I said, I never really wanted to do it. It just so happened that it came about. But then, when I knew it was happening, that's all I wanted to do. That's all I wanted to do. I just wanted to get it done with and get it open. It couldn't happen soon enough. So then when it was all legitimate and above board, trade licenses in, you can open your doors. It was great. And then I painted a Union Jack on the floor, right, in grey and white, 2 shades of grey and white. Looks great, can't see it because the workshop's full. So it's fantastic. What a waste of money that was. So, you know, which is, you know, I suppose a good problem to have, but it's been a whirlwind. You know, it's been difficult. I've got a wife and we've got 2 daughters. As I say, they're 5 and, well, they'll be 5 and 2 in October, the both of them. It's not a great age to be tied up in a house as a lone parent, which is effectively what my wife's had to do. Certainly since the lockdown has been eased and we've opened the business and we've got to be there. But, you know, it's been a massive team effort, and she's managing as where she can all the inquiries on Facebook and Instagram. And for what we do, and I think for a lot of people, but certainly for what we do, the people that like cars like cars. Some people just use their car to get to work and they still need them fixed and repaired, and they need them reliable because they're the lifeline, especially here in Dubai. You can't walk to work here. It's either a 7-lane motorway and or it's 40, 50 degrees outside. You can't walk anywhere. So they need their car. And, you know, but for what we do, Instagram and Facebook are invaluable. And I've really flipped round on the whole social media side since opening up. I was kind of on the turn with it anyway, but with my own thing now, it's incredible. Amy's constantly sending me ideas for posts that she wants to put out, and constantly sending me messages from inquiries to thanks for your service and reviews that people have left us. And it's really helpful, really, really helpful. And obviously there's the support from people like, you know, yourselves, Andrew getting me on here because he's a customer of mine, and other people that have just stuck with me and supported me out of just sheer loyalty, really, appreciating what I've done in the past, and they'll stick with it. And yeah, it's been a whirlwind, and to sit down now for the last sort of hour or so and talk about it it makes you realise actually, yeah, we've done quite a lot, because you do forget. I'm going to go and unlock my phone in 15, 20 minutes or whenever we finish, and I'm going to be like, oh, we sat here for another hour replying to messages and phone calls. But that's just the nature of it, and that's the way it is, and I wouldn't have it any other way, really. You can't really complain.
That's awesome. No, that's great. Honestly, it's a great story. But you know what, I think what we're really useful is we've got a whole kind of wide and mixed audience. So people who are, marketers, but there's a lot of people who are perhaps, in a tricky position right now where maybe they don't have jobs or they feel as if they might lose theirs. So what would your advice be to any of those guys, maybe, worried about, is this the right time to start a business? Should they do it? Should they not? Should they take a risk? I mean, what kind of advice would you give to them?
One of the things that I think is quite important now, and I'm by no means an expert in anything. I do my job that I do, but I think for me, had I not resigned to do my own business, by now I probably would have been in a position where it wouldn't have been financially viable for me to stay at the employer I was at. I couldn't have afforded to live here, and I would have ended up going to a position where I needed to go back to the UK. At least we've got family where we can stay and get on our feet. But the UK is suffering with coronavirus just as the UAE is, and just as everywhere else in the world is.
Yeah.
So moving around like that might be a short-term fix, but I don't actually know how that would work out long term. UK is an example. There's going to be a massive bill for the taxpayer to pay this furlough scheme off and all the other great welfare initiatives, but somebody's got to pay eventually, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
So it's hard to say. I'm not an economist, I don't know. But for me, if you've got something that you're passionate about and something that you're good at, if you can turn that into your own little thing, then just go and do it. Pilots here in the UAE, wow, they've been decimated. A third of the force so far, at least. Probably going to be more by the end of it, unless things pick up really quickly. And it's like, what does a pilot do? What? Because all the airlines in the rest, we're probably in the quite a badly affected place because it was a hub in Dubai, but everywhere's grounded. So where do they go? And I've been talking to pilots. Some of them have started to buy and sell classic car parts, which is great for me because I need quite a few of those, so that's good. And I'll certainly put my business their way. One of the guys has started to sell memorabilia for people. So a lot of pilots, they sort of make a big thing out of their last flight, which we can probably understand, right? But they didn't get that. They were grounded for 3 months and then told, that's you done.
Right.
But all the planes that come in, they are photographed as they land and catalogued and stuff like that. And they are traceable. Well, this pilot's found that out. And he's gone and got these photographs, getting them framed, getting the sort of the, I don't know what they call them, the stripes on the uniform or whatever, and getting them in a nice frame with the name and the date of the last flight. And he's selling not a huge profit, but it's paying his rent.
Yeah, amazing.
There's a lot of pilots that were laid off that would be interested in taking that on, because the chances are, if a pilot's in their 50s, by the time this all gets back to the point of wanting to maybe having a chance of being rehired, well, it might be 5-10 years down the line, and that's maybe not going to be their opportunity then. They're going to have missed it. So there are always ways about it. I've had it a little bit rubbish in the past, and the worst thing is when somebody says to you, don't worry about it, you'll be fine, because that's not true. You can't say it is because you don't know. But I do see now from what I've done that if you can do something yourself, just go and do it. What can you, if you feel like you've lost everything, if you think, I've lost my job, I can't do anything now, well, if you're in a house, as long as you can pay the rent, you're fine. If you can't, you need to talk to your landlord, whatever it may be, your conversations to have with banks or whatever it is to get some breathing space. But if you've got a skill, which most of us have, use it in any way you think you can. And if you haven't, go on. There's so many good online training courses now for a lot of things. So many good online training courses now that are free. Just, try and find a new interest. I think we'll find a lot of small businesses open up in this time where people like myself, I would have done it without COVID-19. So let's not fool anybody about that. I'm not saying that I did this because I'm trying to make them best of a bad situation. I didn't have that kind of foresight. I was going to do it. This just happened and we just had to get through it, and it worked out that it was great for us. But I couldn't have planned that. I think there'll be a lot of people that will have to use this situation now, and I think go for it. There's nothing to. If you think you've lost everything and your life's upside down from what it was, then just go for it. There's nothing more to lose if that's where you are. And if you've got a skill, if you were employed by anybody for any length of time, there's something you can do. And there's always an opportunity, I think, out there. And just even things like creating content like this. If you're in a bad situation, some people like to hear about it, right? Just do your own podcast. You can make your own podcast. It takes 5 minutes to download the Anchor app, and then that's it. That's you done. You've got a phone. Everybody's got a phone. Create a podcast about it. Get involved with social media in a positive way. Filter what you're actually interested in, and filter all the mess out of it. Don't worry about what people say about 5G. Don't worry about what people say about Brexit. Don't worry about what people say about Donald Trump. Just get onto there and use it for what you're interested in. For me, like I said, I turned around to it all with the car stuff. We've got endless inquiries just down to an interesting post we may have put, or somebody that we use as a customer of ours will tag us in a post, or they'll use our name in one of their posts, or they'll recommend us to someone else. And it doesn't take long if you can do as much of it yourself to get to a point where it can pay. I'm back using the spanners again, which I hadn't done for full time for at least 3 years, and it's great. I love it. It saves me paying someone else a salary to do it. It keeps me in an active job, and also helps me set a good example, hopefully, to the staff that I'm employing.
I think that's a really great message, and I think that's really great advice. I think all of that was fantastic. I think we're at 4 o'clock now. So, Glenn, look, Andrew, anything you want to kind of add in there?
No, that's amazing. I mean, I think what we wanted to showcase today was exactly what you've kind of gone through, Glenn. So, I mean, I think really appreciate the time that you put in. I mean, I've seen firsthand where you and I've just grabbed the coffee for 15 minutes, and your phone. I can see you looking at your phone now, seeing how many messages on WhatsApp and missed calls that you've got. So, I mean, we appreciate you taking the time out to kind of share the story today with kind of everyone out there. And I mean, look, I've obviously been to the garage, and it's amazing to see it just full, like you said. I mean, it's to the point where I think you're probably annoying your neighbours out around the other warehouses where you kind of move. It's a bit like chess. I don't know. My car's over there, and the next minute it's on a bay, and I don't quite know how that works. But you seem to, it's great to see it kind of busy. But I mean, how can people get in touch with you, Glenn, if they want to get in touch with you? How can they get in touch with you?
Well, you'll find us at powerworksgarage.com, and you'll also get us on the social media, all the social media channels pretty much. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, same Powerworks Garage. And anybody with any kind of interest in what any of us are doing are always welcome to listen to the Podaholic stuff. We give as much information as we can on there, and it's a good platform as well as any, I think, for people to get an idea of who we are and what we do. And Powerworks Garage is us. We're in Dubai. We're on Al Marabia Street, not far from Times Square, and all the details you'll find are very, very easy to find online and on social media. And if it turns out to not be the case, then we'll have to hire some decent digital marketing people. I don't know if you know anyone who can offer their services, then that'd be good.
Fantastic. Awesome. Honestly, thank you very much, Glenn. Honestly, appreciate the time you've taken out for this. And I really think this has been a really good, there's some brilliant messages, I think, for people out there as well. So, again, we appreciate that. But thanks again. And guys, you know how to find Glenn if you have issues with your car. And obviously, if you want to kind of listen, well, both listen more of Andrew and Glenn's content, the Podaholics podcast network, I think you can find that on all the main kind of podcast platforms as well. So yeah, try and do that. But once again, thanks, Glenn, and we'll hopefully see you very soon. All right, take care.
Thanks, Glenn. See you later.
Bye.
See you next week, Amit. Cheers.